Welcome to Counselor's Corner. My name is Jeremy Counseller. I'm the Dean of Baylor Law School, and today I am joined by Garrett Welch, third-year law student here at Baylor Law School. Garrett, welcome to the podcast. You have recently completed the famous/infamous practice court program, and I'm wondering how you're feeling now and what must be your final or one of your last terms here in law school.
I'm feeling great. I've never been so relieved to show up here at 8 a.m. and have to go to class. It feels, there's no weight anymore on my shoulders. Just trying to, finish strong and get to the summer. Start studying for the bar though, so it never ends really.
Yeah.
But that's what practice court prepares us for. So I'm not feeling too worried about it, thanks to all the things we learned.
Yeah, I want to come back to practice court, but I want to talk to you about kind of the journey that brought you to law school. You've got an interesting background in the sense that I think you worked at the Federal Defenders or the Department of Justice for Detention Services, but you've had here in law school a real focus on business and transactional law, and so kind of tell me about the experience before law school and then your decision to really sort of focus on business and transactional law.
Yes, I think I always had an interest in the law, and I've always loved history and politics, and so I kind of, in the back of my mind, knew that I would end up doing something involving the law. In undergrad, I originally was an econ major and then switched to finance and really focused on the business side. I worked at an accounting firm as a business valuations consultant and basically just crunched numbers on Excel and was kind of all in on doing that. But then, as I spent more time there, I realized that the lawyers that we were working with on these transactions, that they were doing the, pulling the strings, or they were behind the scenes. They were quarterbacking the deals, and they were, playing the logic games to figure out how we need to set up the business entities or how we need to structure the transaction to get the best deal for our clients. And I really thought that was more interesting than, the in the trenches crunching the numbers. And so I decided then to kind of pivot and go to law school, which fit what I had originally always kind of wanted to do.
So you came to law school knowing that you wanted to have a business and transactional law practice when you finished.
Yeah, so I think that would have been different maybe when I was in high school. Maybe I would have thought I would have been a litigator or wanted to eventually be a judge or something. But I think in college I really kind of realized that I loved business and helping businesses succeed. And so in law school, I always thought that I was going to do transactional.
Yeah. So we have a term in law school. It's really devoted to transactional law, kind of the foundational courses, BizOrg, tax, trust and estates. You've got some experience with deals and finance. When you got to those courses, how did you find them? Were they eye-opening, or were they really, really different maybe than what you expected them to be?
I think it was both very different from what I expected coming from the accounting and finance world, but also I really enjoyed it. I think a lot of people may say the business or the transactional quarter is worse than practice court, but I loved it being there 5 or 4 days a week. Learning about business organizations, trust and estates, and especially tax because I love math. And so, we were learning more the background of what builds transactional law rather than, how deals are priced like we do in accounting and finance. But, still really enjoyed it.
So you have a really significant and successful track record on competition teams. And I think when a lot of people, maybe people who are looking forward to law school, think of competition teams, where different law schools send teams to competitions, they think about mock trial, they think about moot court. And of course, there are lots of teams like that. We certainly have lots of them. You have sort of excelled in the transactional law competition team. So talk about your experiences on those teams.
Yeah, and I also enjoyed moot court when we had to do it in our third quarter. I really enjoyed making those legal arguments, and in some ways transactional teams are like that because you're typically negotiating with other attorneys on the other side, and so you're arguing the legal points of the deal, and so in that way that's similar to moot court and somewhat to mock trial as well. But you're also on the front end, you're drafting contracts, and that is very different than litigation drafting. And so then you're taking a contract usually that's already been drafted or a form, and you're tailoring it to your client's needs. And so I think that it's a little bit of a different skill, but those are, especially here at Baylor, where we have Professor Page and Professor Smith, who are really good transactional lawyers. They do a really great job of teaching us those skills, and I think that's obviously helped us to be successful at the competitions. But then those skills that we learn here in terms of advocacy, which are typically most people are learning those to go and be litigators, but we're using them and applying them at the negotiation rounds of the transactional competitions. That's really helped us to succeed there.
So I think a lot of students, when they participate in a competition team, whether it's moot court, mock trial, a transactional competition, they have this experience of the light bulb sort of goes off. They see how everything connects. You're drawing a connection between advocacy training and deal making. I wonder if you had that experience where you felt maybe it was that the competition team was a really integral part of your education and your training.
I think so. It really gives you, it's the practical side of learning the law. Like, you can learn the statutes and you can memorize the statutes, but you don't really know what the statute does until you go into a competition and you try to apply it to the deal, right? Mm-hmm. And so, I think that really helps you learn how it actually works, and how to apply it.
Yeah. Just kind of stepping away from the transactional piece, what advice would you give to a student who's thinking about law school, maybe Baylor Law School, but just law school in general, about how to be successful, I guess, in law school? However you define success, what advice would you give?
I would say for sure you should know you want to go to law school. Everything can be easier or tougher based on if you really enjoy it. And so, I really enjoy the law. I like learning. Even I want to do transactional law, but I love learning about constitutional law or appellate litigation. But, if you enjoy it, I think that is, the first step in being successful. And then I think learning how you study best is really important. I'm not really a 9-to-5 study person. I enjoy being at home. I like to listen to things while I study, which I think is probably, other people would really hate. But, I study. It keeps me from getting bored. And so I'm constantly, learning things on the side, but also learning, or practicing what we're learning here. And so I think that helps me to stay fresh while I'm learning. But you also have to know, I think, when it becomes essential to kind of buckle in or buckle down and just focus on class. And so there are times when you're going to have to, be there 12 hours a day, be here 12 hours a day studying and just going over what you've learned in class. And so I think just learning how you study best and when to really buckle down is important.
What have you learned about, I feel like I really learned to study in law school. What did you learn about being an effective studier in law school, if anything?
Yeah, I think it's kind of that. It's when you need to do certain things, because if I started in week 1 spending 12 hours a day doing nothing but memorizing statutes and cases, I would get burnt out too easily. And so I think being able to split that up with free time, hanging out with my wife, hanging out with friends, and just keeping me fresh for week to week is really helpful. But also, carving out a certain amount of time for the law, right, or for class that help. Once you get to the time when you need to buckle down and do that for 12 hours a day, you're not relearning it, or you're not learning it. You're just refining your skills. And so I think but you're also not burnt out because you
Yeah.
haven't been going the whole time.
Well, and it's particularly important to strike that balance because you mentioned you have a wife, right? So you've got responsibilities outside of your own self, and so it's important to keep that balance. One way that you have kind of struck a balance, my understanding is you have participated in a lot of intramural law school sports teams. Talk to me about that.
I have. That was so in high school I played football and baseball, and then in undergrad I played softball and intramural basketball and flag football, and it's just what I love to do. I've always loved sports, and it's the best way I think to bond with people and to make friends is to be out there, competing and kind of getting chippy with each other and having some healthy arguments while you're on the football field. Anytime, even during practice court, anytime there's we have law school intramurals available, I'm there. It was basketball and flag football this year, and I think we lost the championship in flag football. So we had a good season.
Well, that must be really disappointing to come that close. But you said getting chippy on the field or the court. Do you feel like law students tend to get chippier and argue over things more so than undergraduates in an intramural context?
Actually, no, probably not. And I think there's also, this is in some ways a much more professional environment, I think. And so it also feels kind of ridiculous when you start arguing on the football field with, other people who are going to be attorneys. So I think, we have at least some sort of professionalism about us to know not to burn any bridges while we're on the football field.
Yeah. Well, that's good to hear. That's good to hear. I'm surprised to hear that, but it's very good to hear. Okay, we are now moving to what is called the lightning round. Okay. All right, here we go. Answers have to be short. Okay. If you could have dinner with any historical figure, who would it be?
Richard the Lionheart.
Okay. Forgive me, many of these are food related, but that's who I am. Best meal you've ever had and where?
I love charbroiled oysters, and Phil's in Baton Rouge has really good charbroiled oysters.
Favorite childhood TV show or movie?
I loved the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Watched it constantly.
It makes me feel old that was a childhood movie for you. Favorite dining spot in Waco?
Waco Milo, really good menu that switches all the time.
Good answer. Favorite coffee shop in Waco or some other spot in Waco to hang out with a friend or two?
Four Keeps Coffee is great coffee and good kolaches.
Where is Four Keeps?
It's on Bosque, I guess
Bosque.
North Bosque.
It should be pronounced Bosque, but it's Bosque here in Waco.
Bosque, and it's like north of the Target.
Okay.
Bosque, yeah.
North of the Target. All right, I know that area. Favorite board game or video game?
I always played the NCAA football games when I was a kid, and so
You're a sports guy.
Yeah.
It's a theme. What's the most adventurous thing you've ever done?
Snorkeling in the Caribbean, probably.
Lots of sharks or something in the
No sharks.
clear blue water?
Saw a stingray from a distance. It kind of got my heart beating, but nothing crazy.
Well, I understand you might have a question for me.
Yeah, and so I know as you've come in as dean that you've had a little bit, or you've asked a little bit of the transactional law focused students, what our suggestions may be or what our thoughts are on the transactional program at Baylor are. And so, do you have any ideas for how to improve or enhance or grow the transactional program? And if so, what are they?
Yeah. So, Baylor Law School, our ethos is to prepare students for the practice of law. And of course, that includes business and transactional law sort of practice, mergers and acquisitions and the like. And increasingly what I see is students, not only more of our students interested in that practice, those practice areas, but going into those practice areas. And I think, if we're going to stick to making sure preparing students for the practice of law as best we can, then we need to do more on that front. In terms of what we need to do, I listen to the people who teach in that area. I listen to Beth Miller. I listen to Kayla Landeros. I listen to Whitney Holmes. I listen to Michael Smith. And you mentioned Alan Page. I listen to the people who are really forefront in that area. What do we need? And so I think we've done some things that I think are really important. One is the competition teams that are in the transactional area. Something that we do at Baylor is we try to involve as many students as possible in competition teams, whether it's moot court, mock trial, or a transactional law team, because we think it really contributes to their education. I mean, like as you said, it's the practical part. How do I put this into practice, which is what you're going to do when you finish law school. And so that's something that I think is important. And then we're going to need to add some courses. I mean, we're going to need to make some curricular additions. I'm really proud of the stuff that we have. I think our business organizations course and our trust and estates course and our tax courses are great. We're going to add some courses so that there's more of a variety of things out there, particularly in the elective areas, elective courses that students can do. So I wanted to finish this conversation. Tell me what you're just about done with law school. You mentioned the bar exam. Tell me what you plan to do after that.
Well, I think timing-wise, we're going to go on a trip before the bar.
Where are you going?
And I think we're going to go to Scotland because I missed the Scotland trip with school last year, which I would have loved to have gone on. Okay. So I think we're going to try to do that by ourselves this summer.
That's awesome. And then once you take the bar and pass the bar exam, where are you going after that?
I will be in Houston at Hogan Levels, so I'll be getting ready to start my practice.
And what kind of practice are you starting?
It'll be in their corporate group, and so we'll be doing mergers and acquisitions, project finance, that kind of thing.
That's awesome. Garrett, you're going to be a great lawyer. Thanks for stopping by.
Thank you.
Appreciate you,
I
man.
appreciate it.
Yeah.